Welcome to the Diary of an Apartment Investor podcast. I'm your host, Brian Briscoe with Streamline Capital. Excited for today's show. We got none other than Josh Anderson with us. So Josh, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And do us a favor, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into this apartment investing game.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm originally from Nashville. I live here now. Got into real estate as a real estate agent in 2006 and still do
Great
that.
timing.
Yeah, I had about a year and a half of good market before the mortgage meltdown in early 2008. And just kind of grew my business 30 to 50% a year all through that. Looking back, I was, I guess, ignorant and didn't really fully understand, but I just made phone calls and went and had happy hours and breakfasts and lunches. And so, for the first 5 or 6 years of my business, I poured everything back into the business. There's certainly lots of investment properties that I passed on that I was so worried about making the 3% commission that I looked up one day and realized there were a lot of people making like 30 and 40 and 50 and 60% on deals, and probably a lot more than that because they were flipping properties in like 90 days.
Yeah.
But they were making 30 or 40% in 90 days. It was like, oh, wow, you made 150% return, annualized. So digested version. So probably 6.5, 7 years into the business, I bought my first investment property, which was multifamily.
Straight to multifamily.
Yeah, so I'll tell you my thought process.
Yeah.
So it was a duplex, and then it was a triplex and a quadplex. My thought was, even though I sold primarily single family homes and townhouses, I always just kind of thought, well, if I have a single family home and if it's not rented, then I'm paying the mortgage. But if I have a duplex and I have one side rented, probably like half to 2/3 of the mortgage is being paid. So it like hedged my risk. And that was just always kind of my basic thought process. And I knew, like, in a duplex in a single family neighborhood or area probably doesn't appreciate as well. Everybody cares about appreciation, but I can't live life on appreciation.
Yeah.
So I kind of looked at it and said, well, I live on cash flow, and future appreciation doesn't really pay the bills.
Yeah. It kind of depends on where you're at. If you're doing that to live, you have to have money coming into the door. That's one thing that I've noticed. I quit my W-2. Let's see, today's the 28th, 3 years ago, Thursday. So there's a big difference between having that steady W-2 check. Sometimes I wish I had that steady check back, but most of the time I'm okay with it. But you gotta pay the bills, got to keep the lights on.
Yeah, for sure.
So where'd you go from there?
So I bought the duplex, triplex, quadplex, and then fast forward, I flipped some properties and did some different things. And so I'm still a full-time real estate agent. That's what allows me to do some of the investing that I do. But, most recently over the last 5 or 7 years, I've bought a 30-unit apartment complex, a 22-unit, a 16-unit, and, a couple other quadplexes and things like that. And the idea on all of it was really just, I think when we first started buying these properties, I wanted to go after like 8 or 10 units to 50 units because I felt like, let's just call it 10 to 50 units. I felt like it was too big for the average investor and too small for anybody that was like institutional or anything like that. So it was kind of playing in no man's land so we were really targeting that. My first property I was doing a residential deal, and this female agent, we were doing a deal, and I said, just out of curiosity, do you have anything else coming on the market? And she goes, I've got this like old 30-unit apartment complex that we're going to put on the market. And I was like, tell me more. And so it never went on the market. We bought it. It was 30 units. We paid $1.9 million, 7 minutes from downtown Nashville. It certainly had quite a bit of CapEx and not an ideal demographic that was in it at the time. And it's still, it was definitely C-class property, and it's probably a B- still, but that whole corridor is being completely transformed slowly, but we've got new developments around us. And again, it's 7 minutes to downtown Nashville. So it's one of those properties, you hold it for another 5 to 7 years, and it's worth $10 million.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that space. I love how you said it, the 10 to 50 units, there's usually kind of a dead space, and I transitioned to one company and started at another one. And guess where I started? In a brand new market, that 10 to 50 space, so in the last year, we bought a 56, we'll call it 10 to 56 space, a 24, a 27. So 24, 27, 43, and a 56, and Yeah, it's a space where you, like you said, you don't have competition from the big guys, and a lot of the smaller players aren't really able to hit that high.
So most of what I've found from looking at these properties, it seems like a lot of it's mom and pop.
Hmm.
And the ones I've talked to, like the 30 unit, for example, the son lived in Nashville and he was
Hmm.
managing the property. He was being overpaid and doing a
Hmm.
really crummy job.
Yep.
And the parents lived in Chicago and they were like in their 60s. They were tired of living out of state and owning this. I think the son, they were filtering money through to the son, but he wasn't
Yeah.
doing a very good job and they knew, but they had to kind of offset. And but
Yeah.
I think it was just some of the other ones were, two sisters owned a property and they were in their 60s or 70s
Hmm.
and kids didn't want it, that type of thing where it's just
Yeah.
like they didn't know what else to do with it. They've squeezed as much as they can without putting a bunch of money into it. Really didn't have any systems or processes or anything to it. And we just went in
Exactly.
and, you slowly over time increase the rents. We went, on that 30 unit apartment
Mhm.
complex, we went from, I don't know, $650 and we're now at 1225 or 1250, like 6 years
Wow.
later. And so we've doubled
Nice.
rents, but we've also spent $78,000 on windows and all the PTAC units have been changed out and pretty much all the units have been renovated in some capacity. And most of them like, renovations that cost somewhere between, depending on the level, like 15 to 30,000 a door. And but we won't have to do them again for a really long time. Probably
Yeah.
ever before somebody wants to buy it. The site is about 4 acres, and again, it's 7 minutes from downtown. Somebody's going to tear all that down and do a multifamily retail something or another.
Yeah, yeah, it's nice to be in those high in demand areas too. I mean, the old school way of investing was you buy something, you fix it up, and you hold it until it needs to be fixed again, and you sell it to the next guy who buys it and fixes it up. And yeah, one thing, I've kind of played with longer term hold ideas, but the question's always, eventually we're going to need to renovate, and that's going to take a lot of capital. If we were to save up that capital, we're not going to be able to push out returns. And anyway, my only solution is just sell it at that point. If you ever come up with a way, yeah, I guess you could refinance, but
Well, it's either sell it or go back to the bank after,
Mhm.
slowly stabilizing it and saying, hey, this is what it's worth in today's market. Here's what we've done, and pull some
Yeah,
cash out and do some
yeah,
more. There's no real wrong answer if you're holding it long enough.
yeah. The honest truth is I haven't owned a property more than 4 years. We've sold, we sold a whole lot of stuff in 22 and even into 23. But yeah, eventually that's a problem I'm gonna have to want to solve. I'm gonna want to have to solve. I don't remember, but who
Yeah.
cares?
Yeah. Well, that's what we've done with all of the apartment complex or the
Yeah.
storage units that we own. All these big boy management companies come by and buy all of our properties. We intend to hold them forever to have, cash flow, but somebody pays you enough money, who cares?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Speaking of that, there was one property that we had owned for like a year and a half, and we had no intention of selling. And this was like in the things were starting to go crazy in 21. And, we got an unsolicited offer with a really big number on it. And we were just like, sell? Yep, we're going to
Yeah.
sell. So,
Yeah.
yeah, somebody puts a big enough number in front of you. Absolutely. Let's talk about this. What challenges did you have going from like the smaller multifamily to that first one? I think you said the first one was, ballpark 30 units.
Yeah. What
So,
challenges? All of them. It's I think it's the fear of the unknown. Like a duplex is really simple. You're buying 2 units or 2 doors that are, maybe a 2-1 on each side. It's pretty simple. When you buy 30 units, it's like kind of scary. I would say
Mhm.
actually buying bigger deals is actually probably easier than a lot of smaller deals
Mhm.
overall. But it's figuring out all the
Great.
things. It's like, how are we going to run a pro forma? Is our pro forma accurate? Are we going to be upside down on this? Which
Mhm.
bank's going to give us the best deal? Do we go to Fannie or Freddie? Do we
Yep.
go to a local, credit union or a local bank? I mean, there's
Mhm.
just so many different things. Which CapEx items do you do first? What happens when we hit COVID and everybody doesn't want to pay?
Mhm.
Even though they're all deemed essential, because in that 30 unit, they were pretty much all construction workers. It was it just happens to be that was about all 30 of the units were probably 28 of them were Hispanic tenants. They tried to not pay, and we knew that they were all in the construction industry. And we're like, yeah, y'all are essential. You need to go ahead and pay up.
Yeah.
So, but it's all those things. Like you're kind of learning a little bit as you go. You're figuring it out sometimes, and that's not necessarily the way my advice. There's a lot of different directions to go, but I always tell people go find somebody you can do deals with. Either go find a partner,
Yeah.
like maybe you're the bird dog, maybe you're an LP in a fund or the GP and you're out. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to skin it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I agree, find a partner, find somebody who's been there, lots of different ways to get into the game. Well, cool, cool. So lots of challenges. Now, when you put these two deals together, and you may have briefly mentioned it before, but let's go into a little more detail. How did you structure the first couple ones? Did you syndicate and raise capital? Did you find a couple of friends, put your own money in, or all of the above?
Yeah, so I actually have just one partner on each of those three
Hmm.
apartment complexes.
Okay.
I've been part of syndications and funds and different things. We just decided none of them were big enough dollar amounts that we wanted to syndicate. And, we put whatever it was, 15 or 20% down on those particular deals. And you can look at non-recourse interest only for the first 3 years to
Mhm.
stabilize it. And with that 30 unit, we ended up doing a Freddie loan. There's some things in there as far as interest only for 3 years to stabilize. It's non-recourse, but you also have to send in documents on a regular basis and tell them all the things that you've done or that you're doing over the next quarter or next 6 months. They
Mhm.
have appraisers that come out. So, and we did that on two of the three of those. And then one of them, we just did a local commercial.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. Now, going back, you mentioned, single partner. How did you form the partnership? How did you guys come together? Can you give us a little more insight into how that came about?
Yeah. So the 30 unit, I just went to, I
Mhm.
was talking to one of my friends and I said, "Hey, would you be interested in this deal?" And he was like, "Yeah, let's figure it out." I mean, it was
Mhm.
literally as simple as that. And the other two units, I own 50% with another guy. I actually brought him the deals and he just called me back like after I sent it to him. He said, "Well, would you just want to partner on these?" And I said,
Mhm.
"Yeah, actually." I was
Simple.
being typical realtor, bringing it to a really good client. And
Mhm.
he called me back and said, "Yeah, do you want to partner?" And I said, "Absolutely." I was hoping you'd call me back.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. It's nice when it works like that. So,
If you find a good enough deal, the money's easy. I
mhm.
think in the environment that we're in or that we've been in, the money's easier than finding the deal. So you find a good enough deal and people will be beating down your door to invest.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's definitely true. If you have a good deal, I mean, I think it's a little more complicated than that. If you have a good
Sure.
deal, I think you have to have a good reputation too. Good
Sure.
deal, good reputation, and way to broadcast it. Yeah, people are going to be beating down your door. But yeah, that's the one thing that I think a lot of people. I think I fell into the trap. If you have a good deal, the money's going to come up front. I didn't put enough focus and effort into like the capital raising, but we did a lot of syndications, not smaller JVs. But
You definitely have to
yeah,
build out your network and
Mhm.
your buyer list and your,
Yeah.
all those things are important. But when you're first getting started, I think you probably don't have some of those things. And
Mhm.
I think it's go bring it to the people that are either real estate investors or bring it to the like wealthiest people that that might be able to either put you in touch with somebody or they might be interested themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, cool. So you've done a couple of these kind of like mid-range multifamily. Do you have any desire to get into the larger stuff, or are you going to stick with that kind of that same size?
No, I think the natural progression, I mean, I'm always looking for deals and opportunities. I think the natural progression is to go package up some of the smaller ones and certainly go do bigger deals, whether you keep them or you 1031 exchange, whatever it is. I love the idea of bigger, but if I found another 30 to 50 unit or 24 unit or whatever it is, and I could make the numbers work, I'd be buying them all day long.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, awesome. Now you're in the Nashville area. Are all your investments also in the Nashville area? I think we talked some of them are, but are all of them in the Nashville area?
All of them are in Nashville. They're all within 12 to 15 minutes of my house, and my house is in the middle of the city. They all have a Nashville address. Yeah.
Awesome. Are they all in the 615?
They're all in the 615.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and I know this market really well and I don't have to rely on anybody else. That
Yep.
doesn't mean, you can't go partner with somebody or go find deals in other counties or other cities or states. I have a ton of friends that own properties out of state. I could probably have a bigger portfolio if I did that, but that requires me to either learn a new market or rely on other people to know the
Yeah.
market well as I know Nashville. And I just haven't been willing to do that because I've been able to find enough deals.
I did do that for a while, and guess what? I went back to, looking for deals in my own backyard. So yeah, it turns out that being a master of your own metro is a lot more important long run than stacking up the units and having like a big number behind your name. But yeah,
I've got a
absolutely.
lot of clients during COVID that bought investment properties, whether it was a short-term rental or whatever, and they just didn't know the market and they just heard Nashville as a buzzword and they wanted to jump into this market. And now they're, not making money on it as a long-term rental, or it's not renting for as much as it is, or as much as they thought they were. They aren't cash flowing as much. And so that doesn't always happen. It's nice to be able to invest in what you know and the area that you know.
Yeah, yeah. And I think there's lots of goodness with that as well. And I mean, not to mention, I mean, I think you hit something key that I want to just kind of dial in a little bit more. You said like all your properties are within 15 to 20-minute drive of where you're at. That makes the management, a lot easier. And coming from somebody that, started out with properties spread over 3 states. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing right now. I want to have all my properties, clustered in a really small area. I call that area Salt Lake City, but clustered in a small area. We're in the 801, by the way. So, and for those of you guys who are not watching this on YouTube, he's got a sign behind him that says the 615, which refers to the area code in Nashville. But that's where that's coming from. Anyway, well, cool. Any big goals or aspirations, or what's next for you coming up?
Yeah, I think for me, it's when I first started investing, I wanted 500 doors. And
Yeah.
it's interesting, that's changed because I actually want less doors that are better quality now. So as you get older, you realize, well, maybe I want to squeeze more out of fewer units or fewer doors, or maybe I don't think I'll ever get away from like apartments or even, the real estate, like residential stuff, but I don't know enough about commercial and triple net leases and
Mhm.
things like that. And we've invested a good bit in different storage units, some apartment funds with a operator out of Nashville that does all over the Southeast. But next for me would be, I really like the idea of getting into a triple net lease where you have one tenant that's like a Starbucks or, an AT&T, and they've got a 20-year lease. So again, I'm not going to get away from the apartments. I
Yeah.
just would like to expand partly for a knowledge base and partly for, quality of life. I thought 500 doors sounded cool, but I want to know more like, hey, can I figure out
Mhm.
how to make $100,000 a month just, from a cash flow, just from this particular piece of my business?
I would much prefer the $100,000 a month than any door amount. and
That's right.
and I mean our business strategies are a little different. I syndicate, so if you look at my door count, I'm at like 16, almost 1,700, but I own somewhere between 1 and 15% of each one of those. Not a little bit different, going in with one partner or owning the lion's share of a smaller portfolio. But yeah, door count's not where it's at. Money, how much money's coming in, what's the cash
Yeah.
flow like, and what's the lifestyle like.
It's too
Yeah.
hard of a job if you're not making a certain amount of money.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, how about this question? What advice would you give to somebody who's just coming into the business?
I could go a ton of different directions here. I think the best advice, in my opinion, I'm a very growth oriented person. If you're going to get into buying something like investment properties, either hire a coach, have a mentor, somebody that's gone before you that you can
Mhm.
stand on their shoulders. And man, I see a lot of people try to buy some programs and they end up trying to flip properties or buy this or that. And they just don't understand the numbers. They get in a position where they're upside down or they have to give it back to the bank or whatever it
Mhm.
is. Have a mentor, have a coach, get into some type of program that can teach you so you don't have to learn it yourself. And if you're not willing to do that or you don't
Yeah.
have the money to do it, go buy some books, bare
Yeah.
minimum. Listen to some podcasts, read a handful of books. But I tell everybody, and this is probably more on like flips for me, if you haven't done a flip before or you haven't bought an investment property, just do it with somebody. It's better to make less money than make no money.
True, true, true.
That way you learn why vendors are, having preferred vendors and your network of people is so important.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a discussion recently with somebody about, looking for other vendors. We've got a general contractor that we've worked with a lot, and we're going to keep on working with them a lot. If somebody undercuts them on price, I don't think I would go away from them just because, we know exactly what we're getting. We know quality of work. I think that's something that's understated. And to your previous point, you said, podcast books. I remember doing all of that front, podcast books. And then finally, I started looking for it myself. And that's when I got into coaching. I started looking at things. And for me, the podcast and books by themselves weren't enough. So, uh,
No, that's just like the very, very beginning when you decide that you have some amount of interest.
yeah,
I think when
absolutely.
you decide you're going to get serious and you're going to either make this your full-time job or it's going to be income earner that's at least $100,000 a year,
Yeah.
you'd be crazy not to go pay for some kind of program or coaching or,
Yeah.
a year's worth of coaching is not going to do anything negative for you. Even if you don't get anything out of it, you're learning something. And if you're
Yeah.
a learning based person and you want to ultimately make more money and be an expert, I mean, I've had coaches like literally my entire life. And for my entire professional life, I've been paying for either a coaching program, a mastermind of some sort, years. I mean, I've spent hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars on conferences, masterminds, weekly coaching programs, or coaching sessions. I just think it's super important. I think you can get to where you want to go 10 times faster if you just invest in yourself or invest
Mhm.
in a program to allow you to do it faster.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, my personal situation, for one reason or another, I wanted to be out of my W-2 in 3 years. And when I started kind of poking around and, touring properties, and I didn't even have an underwriting spreadsheet at the time. I was just like, well, this one's, broker just sent this to me. But yeah, I mean, it was with that 3 year timeline, I wanted to accelerate it and I wanted to bypass those mistakes. That's exactly what it was. I paid what at the time seemed like a lot of money for it, but looking back, I probably would have paid double or triple that for the results I've gotten.
I think you're constantly evolving and we're constantly interested in different things or different facets of the business. And so you just go seek somebody out that's already done it, whether it's paid or a mentor.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, cool. Well, one more question before we close up, and that's how can the listeners learn more about you?
I'd say the best way to find me would be on Instagram or Facebook, the real Josh Anderson.
Mhm.
If you just type in the real Josh Anderson, I pop up. So there you
Yeah,
go.
awesome. There you go. Instagram, Facebook, and go find them. So, well, Josh, thanks for coming on the show today. Very much appreciate your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.